I'd like to start out with the antitrust policy notice, as we always do in our meetings. And I will jump into the regular agenda. We're going to talk about some news. There's a few standards issues we are working on today, so thank you for coming, and we can see if there's any other items. So I'll just quickly go over the news. I don't have any notes on the slides, so I know just as much as you do about these things. But there are links at the bottom of the slides, and I'm sure there's more information there. There's an OpenChain event coming up. It's the second China Automotive Cybersecurity and Data Security Conference. So if you'd like more information about that, you can find it on our website. We're also having the legal and licensing workshop in Gothenburg, Sweden. Oh, that happened in the past, sorry. That was just a couple of weeks ago. And we have OpenChain legal work group. That meeting happened. I wasn't able to attend. I hope it went well. And the OpenChain webinar, an update on clearly defined. I wasn't able to attend, but I plan to watch this one. It's recorded, so you can go see it if you like. Okay, so for future events, mark your calendars. There's probably going to be a mini summit at the Linux Foundation's Open Source Summit in North America. It sounds like a lot of us will be attending virtually, so I don't know if there'll be an in-person room for sure, so stay tuned on that. Okay, ready to jump in? In the last meeting, we covered a couple of issues. We talked at length about this one. It still needs some work, but we're not going to tackle that today. And we've completed this issue 53. For this call, as Shane wrote, the plan is to cover some of the open issues around the security spec update. So we'll be revisiting 35 later, but today we're going to talk about these three issues. So let me just jump into, I have the, is that it? Here we go. Okay, so let's start with 29. Add triage entry to specific situations where vulnerability not applicable. So Helio noticed, let's see. If a reported vulnerability affects the component used, what is the process for that? He's got some expected behaviors here. Is Helio on the call? Let's see if you want to tell us about this. You are welcome to. It looks like he's not here yet. Okay.
Well, I'm here. This is Chris Wood.
Hi, Chris. Do you have any background about this you want to share?
Say again?
Would you like to share a little background about this one?
Well, there was some old language in here, which was just a series of bullets, but it didn't have any introductory language. So what we did is we worked on it a little bit and have a proposed, which Shane had come up with some language. We iterated on it, and his last comment was that we needed to still work on it some more. So my final put on this was that as the proposal at the bottom of the page. Yep, that's the one.
Okay.
So we just were iterating back and forth with how it would be cleanest to present this, and thought we'd let everybody look at it. And I haven't seen any comments at all in April on this one.
Okay. So are these bullets unchanged from the current spec, and then you've added this sentence?
Yeah, pretty much. We kind of combined a little bit on the sentence, on the bullet points as well.
Okay. So I'll give everyone a moment to read this and see if you have any comments. What is the quick question? What is the parts that are in parentheses? Are they alternatives or are they definitions?
And that is just reiterating what a method means. It's something that each program or company or organization should come up with that defines what their process and tools are in order to take care of this particular issue right here, to detect, identify, and document the existence of known vulnerabilities.
I have a comment on that first sentence there. So where it starts should at the end of the first line should be continuously in use. So a little grammatic in continuous use. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes. Very good.
Okay.
So I have a question about continuous. I wanted to know, like, how do most people monitor security for open source components? Is it really continuous or is it periodic, like daily, or do you sign up for a list and you get, like, security bulletins from Android, for example? What does continuously mean here? Like, can continuously mean regularly?
I think,
yeah.
Jeff,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think I've seen a lot of people going in circles around this definition, because there's the idea of scanning continuously, even if the content hasn't changed on disk. And then there's the alerting on known component versions. If I have OpenSSL that was found a year ago, but it hasn't changed, I do want that alert today when the vulnerability has been discovered. I don't need a new scan, but I do need an alert. So I do like the idea of, that there needs to be a method for continuously alerting on known vulnerabilities. Where we have difficulty is where there's old projects that are no longer being scanned. They were released 5 years ago, but they're still out in the wild. There should be a method, a service for alerting on that known bill of materials that it has a vulnerability there. So I'd want to make sure that whatever we end up with this language here, that it reflects if a vulnerability is discovered today in something that's been used for a while, we should still get an alert for it if it's in use.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Does the definition?
But it's hard to disagree with that.
Yeah. Does this definition cover that use case, Jeff?
I believe it. I believe it does. It does. A method, a process using necessary tools should be continuously in use to detect, identify, and document, known vulnerabilities. I think, keep it simple. That line is I think clear and simple. I think we'll always have this debate between scanning and alerting. As long as there's tools that scan and there's tools that alert. But I like what that says, and I would agree with it, right now.
Okay, so you're okay with the continuously in use? That doesn't. I'm just trying to avoid being too prescriptive, because we don't know what the future tools will look like. There might be something better come along, or is it generic enough? Is, I guess, my question.
I do think,
I'm concerned a little bit about that continuously. Like, if something pops up in the middle of the night, do I have to wake up and handle it? It continuously kind of implies that. Yes.
No, I was kidding you, Mary. Sorry.
So maybe, yeah, I'm just afraid somebody will kind of get too literal on this and say that if it's not running 24 hours a day, then it doesn't meet the standard.
So it looks like the method will be in use. Maybe that's a little bit of a weird way to say it. And maybe that's what's tripping me up here. the method should exist and be applied. I guess it should be in use, but is continuously.
Yeah, so maybe taking that out there, should be in use to regularly detect, identify, and document the existence. So what do you want to be? Continuous or regular for detection, right?
It seems like we want to give, as Mary just said, like we want to give people some leeway. It's not to the microsecond. Responses required this microsecond, but we also don't want people to take 5 years, to define continuously to be, oh, I looked at it every 5 years, and then have your user base coming and saying, I found another problem. I found another problem. Why aren't you managing this? So, I do think there's some leeway where it says a method, which is a process with tools. That gives you a bunch of leeway. Continuously, maybe puts a little bit of more urgency there. That's closer to, daily, weekly versus yearly. I could see softening that a little bit, but I do kind of like pushing a little bit of urgency around vulnerability management.
Maybe frequent is a better word instead of continuous.
It depends on what kind of a build process you've got set up. Because, for example, if you're doing CI/CD and you're using Jenkins and you're using all the plugins, it's a part of the build process. So scanning is not continuously in use to identify known vulnerabilities, as was earlier stated. But I do agree that it needs to be that if you take it out of there, it kind of takes the urgency away from alerting and identifying.
I just started. Sorry. Well, maybe I go, because like one thing is like, okay, we do have, not we, organization has, some, I don't know, let's say IoT devices out there in the wild, and then new CVE comes up, like 0-day or new CVE. Then could it be say that once new known vulnerability comes out, then one should check that if the application is infected or not, or is it like applicable for our applications which are already out there? So the frequency would be that whenever there's a new known vulnerability out, then check that if you are affected or not. I don't know how to put that in proper wording there, but because if you're continuously just checking and there's no new vulnerabilities out there, so what are you checking for?
I think that falls into this bullet. Well, right. It doesn't have to be newly discovered. It could be known, and you find out that it's new, but newly discovered to you.
That bullet was intentionally added so that if there was a new vulnerability that was reported out there in the wild, that it would make it quickly back into your process, so that you knew that MySQL version 15.34 was no longer clean, but it had something that needed to be addressed at some point based on the scoring that's given to it.
Yeah.
If there's an installed base, this process should be, to use this word, continuously applied. As long as people are using the software you created, a process for discovering and managing the vulnerability should exist. So I like the idea of this whole section here. And I'm okay with the word continuously. We could say frequently, could soften it, as appropriate, and escalate it in the future. I do think people, companies in particular, do need to have a little pressure on them to say, just because something's old doesn't mean you can say it's not my puppy anymore. It's yours. You gotta.
But let me open a different door here. So if I read the first sentence here, for each open source software component in the development cycle, what do we mean there by development cycle? Do we mean we're still developing this software and therefore these things apply because it's still in development? And if so, when does that development end? And then we keep talking about stuff out there in the wild and IoT, and probably some of that is no longer under development at all. We only do as needed updates, and
yeah, it's a good question.
Good point. Good point.
Is that on purpose, Chris, or anyone, or?
Well, the development
software life cycle.
We could use life cycle, yes, because
Then why it's only in the development life cycle, can be in the release life cycle, can be in the maintenance life cycle also. So it's the whole life cycle, not only in the development life cycle, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Software life cycle, software development life cycle. Yeah, like software life. Yeah.
Maybe we don't mean development cycle. We mean in the product, right? Whatever's delivered.
Right, because there was a clear intention when we first started talking about this back when we were first developing the specification, was that even the development cycle is a continuous process unless you deliver once and put it in a repository and forget about it. But even then, you're still supposed to be continuously scanning your repository to make sure that what you've got sitting out there in the repository doesn't have something in it that you don't want in there because it's been identified and now it's a known vulnerability. So you want to be able to go back and catch those and pull that back into the development cycle to take care of it if it needs it, or at least document it.
Like current and previously released software products, or words to that effect.
Yeah. I mean, my company delivers embedded software. It's not like your computer where I can get updates every day that fix vulnerabilities. In a vehicle, it's a little bit different.
Oh, absolutely, it's different.
Is that
especially?
Is that better? And was that you, Mary, speaking just now? Does this still work for that scenario you were describing?
Yeah.
Okay, so we tweaked that a little bit. We're all okay with method.
That was my language, and the perfect is enemy of the good. The thing that doesn't capture is like previously released software that no one uses anymore. We don't care. Nobody uses it. Nobody uses it. Don't have a security process. It's kind of hard to get such refinement on the language, I think, to cover all the bases. But I think that the core is stuff we're building now plus stuff that we've released that people are still using, or potentially. And this is maybe a question for like the IoT and other software vendors is, and this is a legal question too, I guess, is when does our requirement end for OpenChain? Is there a legal mandate for the length of our, once we've released it, we always have to do this process? Or is there a things under paid, paid support contracts or et cetera, et cetera. And that's a bigger question, but that's, gets to the heart of this process here. So if I've released software, I need to have some sort of method and process for discovering vulnerabilities. When does this section stop being applicable? Is it when you're paying? Is it when nobody's using it?
Would this cause the risk impact score to be low? So the old software could still be in this, fall into this category, but it would have a low impact score. Does that take care of that? Or do you think we should limit this to that kind of software?
I really think that it's important that we capture that idea, but I don't think that with open source software, there's a real way of knowing that that software is no longer in use anywhere. And that's my big problem with open source software is I've seen software from the mid 90s still in use. Some of it's still the same version.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, for my company, usually when we're sending software to an OEM, it's built into the contract how long we're going to support that software, usually like around 15 years. Cars can certainly be on the road that long, but by 15 years, a very small percentage of them probably will be.
Mm-hmm.
What if we had supported software? Is that a real term?
Supported, yeah.
Is that too limiting, do you think? Or does that make sense to everyone?
It makes sense, but I still come back to the same thing that, for example, we can be developing software that we have a contract with our customer that we're going to support the software for 10 years or whatever is written into the contract, which is primarily driven by the customer's requirements. But the open source software that we choose to include in there is not necessarily supported software, especially software that's old that no longer has any living or interested people that are still working in the repository that it came from.
Well, this is about components in supported software. So it's not about the components on their own. We're not, even if they're not supported, if you're supporting the software that it's in, I think this would still apply, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so what about the company that made that software in the 90s that's still in use? Is the company still in use, number one? Number two, are they willing to go back and update their software? My guess is not.
But I think if I'm a company and I'm signing up to the OpenChain process and I say I'm OpenChain security process conformant, I'm going to do all these actions. And I think I still will be, I'm signing up to manage all of my release software. That's what I'm doing by saying I'm OpenChain conformant. And if I'm not willing to do that, I need to take the sticker off my website because I'm no longer conformant.
You mean if a vulnerability shows up in software in 20 years and I don't fix it, then I lose my OpenChain certs?
I think so, because I think you're no longer following. If it's still, that's the question about, how long does this OpenChain security process apply to your software you've released? Is it forever? Is it for some sort of commercial term, or is there going to be some external government term, which I think will eventually happen? I think it's okay to keep it soft, like we have right now, which is supported software or words to that effect, saying you get to define what's supported. You get to define how long you're going to do the care and feeding of the vulnerability management process, but you should do it for everything that you currently are releasing and stuff. It's not just the head of your tree that you're paying attention to, it's your installed base.
Yeah, and that makes sense with Mary's concern about the car may only be in service for 15 years unless I own it, then it's going to be longer. But the point is that once the automobiles are no longer maintained under warranty by the organization that has released them, do they really have an obligation to go back? So if you've got a 36-month warranty on your car, can you really go back to the automobile manufacturer and ask for support on this vulnerability that came up in the software? That's a more complex legal question, I guess. You're right, Jeff.
This is, we see things in Europe like the CRA, the Cyber Resilience Act, et cetera. So I think we're going to see some more legal requirements around time of support for these things and the vulnerabilities they contain. I think it's still a little too early to codify that in OpenChain, but I think we should be aware that there is going to be our own desires on how long we want to support stuff for vulnerability management, but also the EU and the US are going to have legal opinions.
Right, and they'll probably all be different.
Yeah, my guess in the US for sure, if you're still selling it to the government and they're still using it, you're probably going to be required to do a management process. That's my assumption until I see words to the effect otherwise.
But just going back to the car example, let's say there's some vulnerability that would then, I don't know, let a third party to take control of the car, and the car is older than 5 years. I'm fairly sure that whoever was the manufacturer of the car, they need to take care of that.
True.
Well, I think they'll end up with, there's the warranty, or typical like 3 or 5 year warranty or whatever. And then there's kind of a separate software support. This is what I'm kind of seeing. And again, I will give my disclaimer. I'm not really involved with this. This is what I'm hearing in my environment, but that we should be expected to support that software for 15 years. So if something does come up, and the car manufacturers are aware, they are watching this, and they'll come back to us about vulnerabilities. They'll say we need to get some new software here, and then it could be how they manage that with the vehicle owners is outside of my scope for sure. Like maybe I don't know if there would be a recall notice or if there would be some kind of a update notice where they have to bring their car in for service and get a software update. But that's not really our job to figure that out, what exactly that mechanism should be.
If we go back in time, roll up a little bit in our GitHub issue here, we kind of, I wonder if we should be doing a mind meld between some of the older language. Like if you start at the very top of this issue, maybe just to kind of reset on this was brought in because somebody said we should figure out if somebody reports a vulnerability, there should be a process. Like that was the core issue here. And then we started talking about SBOMs and supplied software. And I wonder if we lost a little bit of the middle language here. We're looking at the last item here, but we've lost a little bit of like the, I think maybe the original concern here is there should be a process if somebody reports a vulnerability.
I agree with you, and I have comments on this released supported software. I work for Volvo Cars, so let's say from the legal requirement, you of course keep 15 years or how many years stuff there, but from the security point of view, we shall not ask people to continuously scan for the released product, and no company will do that. If you release the product, you released it, you keep all this source code and stuff in track. but you won't do the continuous scan for the released product. You have so many branches, you don't have this capacity to do that in reality.
Yeah, I think that there's a move, at least, you know, here that I'm seeing, that the requirement is not in the OpenChain specification, but it's just a general thought within industry, is that you will continually scan your repositories where you keep the original artifacts of the software that you've released, so that if you find a vulnerability, you can let people know that this software version that we released has got a severity 10 known vulnerability against it now.
Mm.
So that people can take the correct actions, whether they're within your organization or you're outside your organization. Somebody should be paying attention to that. And if you don't
Yes.
scan your repositories, you'll never know that.
Yes, that makes sense. So you scan your repository, which is not released, but not the released repository, if you get what I mean. So you continue scan your repo, which is on the development phase. If you found something, you need to find if this open source component which have the security problem, you need to check if that is in the released product or not. So that is an action, which you already have a bullet for that, I think.
And Mary, I think that's the difference between scanning and maybe alerting from your existing SBOM, where I think when companies release big software, you know, they'll do their scanning as part of the development, then they'll build their software SBOM, and then once they release that product, they won't scan the source code anymore because it's been released. Have a system in place that checks that SBOM for newly reported vulnerabilities on the known components. And I think that's going to be one of the
alert process
we need to see between scanning and reporting as we start talking install base and old software.
Does anyone know why we changed from bill of materials and supplied software to something else? I might have missed that discussion. So this was the last proposal on March 20th, and then it looks like there was a call. I think I was there for most of that call, but then we changed to make it not defined terms. But it sounds like it might be okay to reference a bill of materials and the supplied software is already defined. Does anyone remember why that was made more generic?
No, I can't remember the content of that discussion.
I think we should make it more generic to just say, for each open source software component in the supplied software released to the market. Just don't say how. Leave out development cycle, leave out bill of materials. Let the companies figure that out. Just, you know, what we're really concerned with is the open source and supplied software that's out in the wild.
Yeah, I like that. I wonder if the definition of supplied software already includes released to the market. I don't have that in front of me. Whoops, what have I done? Don't do that. For each open source component in supplied software, we can check the definition. The method should be continuously in use.
Should be continuously in use, yep.
Okay.
Okay, if it's already supplied and out in the field, I don't know if continuously is the right term anymore. That's why I go with frequent.
Should be in use to frequently detect?
Maybe quickly detect. How I'll say it should be in use to quickly detect, and then leave that up to them how they're going to accomplish that.
I like it.
Okay, we use in our company, we use continuously because first it's aligned with the continuous integration today, and also for each submit or commit, then you have your snip code also. So that need or require development team to continuously scan to detect the open source, both for license and security.
I think we have two different use cases here. Maybe we're getting confused by that. One is software in development, which has not been released yet, and or is in kind of a series maintenance kind of support thing where you're doing regular updates. And then there's the thing where you've released it and now you're basically done with development. You know, either you're done with your series of releases or it was a one and done to begin with. So maybe we need two different sections.
Yeah, that depends on whether you're using CI/CD or not. We're gonna get this so fragmented, it's gonna be difficult to follow. And what we're trying to do is provide just general guidance that's not we're not telling people what they have to do, or we're not telling them what tools and processes are, but what they need to do in order to be compliant with the specification, right?
Yeah, I want to keep it clear.
And I think it.
I wonder if we got on track on this. If we go up to we could see it at the top. Add triage entry to specific situations where vulnerability is not applicable. I kind of wonder if we got off on a garden path here, because I think the core question was, you got a vulnerability, but it doesn't affect you. You know, we had the examples previously, like that CVE from 2005, which was a broken CVE. There was no actual vulnerability there, or the AIX situation where I'm on Unix, not AIX, therefore the vulnerability doesn't affect me. I think that's what we're trying to solve here. Is there's a vulnerability that's reported. I have a process that looks at that and says, we're not affected. Either it's a fake vulnerability that it's not real, or we're not affected because we don't use the either the routine or the operating system that's affected. Therefore, we documented that it doesn't affect us, and we're going to pass it on to our user base. Like, yes, I know you're all worried about CVE 2005-1754, but don't worry, we're not affected because of X. And that's, I think, what we're trying to put in the spec here is, we know this is a use case, these things happen, and we want to have our companies be able to communicate that this investigation was done and we've passed on the CVE is still there, but we're not affected. Documentation that addresses that. And I wonder if the text I'm seeing at the bottom, I think, has kind of gotten off from that original.
It's a completely different thing.
I think we're solving a good problem here at the bottom, but I think we got off track from what the original issue was.
But they will need to
detecting and communicating false positives.
Yeah, basically, there's a false positive. There's false positives exist. We've done the research, and we're telling you as a user of our software that this vulnerability does not exist. It does not affect us.
Right, and that's a requirement for the vulnerability SBOMs that you report that.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's helpful to remind us of the purpose of this improvement. And I agree with you that it is evolving a little bit away, but
Yeah.
I think that identifying that a vulnerability exists is always the first step, right? So I guess what they were trying to say with this opening is make sure that there's a process in place to look for these things in order to facilitate resolving whether they're serious or not, or whether they apply or not.
I think the whole there is that vulnerabilities get reported, and so much of our previous language was like a CVE comes out, all of our language was, and we fixed it. You know, we upgraded the component, we removed the component. And the use case that we didn't have was, it was an incorrect CVE or a false positive. And I think at the heart of it, that's what issue 29 was, is let's also handle that case so that that users of OpenChain know that that's a safe and appropriate answer to give their customers. We investigated it, doesn't affect us, and here's our documentation to show that we've done that.
It could be that what we are writing already exists in the spec. I'm sorry, I should have reviewed it this morning before we talked, but identifying vulnerabilities is something we probably already have in there, right?
Yes.
We don't have to tell them that they need to continuously do that. We could just, assume they're already complying with that part of the spec, and then we could say something about what to do when it doesn't affect your supplied software. Well, that kind of brings us back to the drawing board, though, but maybe that's okay. We seem to have diverged a bit.
Yeah, that's one of the problems with so long between discussions on resolving this is drug on for a while, and people forget what the exact intent was at the time. Because in actuality, there are actually three kind of major steps in vulnerability reporting. One is it's reported, but nobody's assessed the actual severity of it yet. So then they assess the severity, and then they say, yep, we detected this and we fixed it. We removed and replaced the component or whatever we did. Or no, the severity was determined that it was really only a 2.0, and because of the way this software works, the likelihood is so low that we're not going to do anything with it, or it needs to be addressed still. So I don't know. I keep thinking back to Shane, and every time we talk about these kinds of things, we don't want to get overly prescriptive, but we do want to make sure that we hit all the right points. And I don't think that assuming that somebody is continuously scanning without having ever told them that they should be continuously scanning both the stuff that's in development and the stuff that's been released, because that's the way that we do it. We have a repository that's got all the source code and the binaries for all the released software, and we continuously scan that just to make sure that nobody has reported any new vulnerabilities against that software. And if there is, then it goes back into work to see what the severity actually is for this software. And then if we need to do something, then we do it and make a release.
So if supplied software contains code that's in development and also released, that will solve that. It'll catch both. I don't have that in front of me. Let me see if I can pull that up.
I guess going back to, like, I've pulled up the full spec PDF here. I wonder if we've kind of gotten too far away from the original. Like, I don't know if I'd want to keep editing the current text we have, as opposed to looking back at what 332 originally said and trying to address issue 29, which was, the cases where you're not doing any changes because it's a false positive. And I think that was 29 was simply you have false positives. Let's make sure the spec reflects the existence of false positives. And if we have other things to talk about, continuous scanning, et cetera, I think that's a new issue, not issue 29.
Okay, agreed.
Yeah, I like that.
Let me see. I do have a complaint that it's hard for me to find the spec on the website. I've been meaning to propose that we make that easier. But okay, let me see.
Generic web search, OpenChain spec, and click security spec.
Yeah.
And click the. I hope it's current. But
performance. Okay, I'm just trying to pull up a copy of that. Yeah, it would be great to have a link to it on the front page. Where are you? These versions? If anyone has a link, if you want to drop it in the chat, that'd be helpful.
And are we using? I'll paste this in. This is 1.1 security spec. This is the last one. This was from October of 2022. I don't think I proceeded, but I haven't done an exhaustive search.
And this is the link to the one that we're actually editing right now, which is 2.0. 1.1 is the release spec. So that'd be a good comparison.
Comparison? I'm sorry, which one should we look at? I'm not clear.
Well, we want to look at 2.0. You can ignore my 1.1.
Okay. Okay, trying to find it. It's like this one. 2.0?
Yes.
Right. All right, I'm trying to share. It will pop up in a minute.
Ta-da.
Okay, so let's check the definition of supplied software real quick. Software that an organization distributes or makes available to third parties. Okay, so it doesn't include something in development. So we might want to try to capture that. Back to here. Oh, okay, so requirements, we have policy, competence, awareness. I'm looking now for the...
Well, it starts right in there.
Yeah, identifying or detecting. Here we go. Defining and implementing. Okay. So it's not, go ahead.
It's got about 3 or 4 steps in there that have to do with vulnerabilities, because the first one is to detect the existence of known vulnerabilities, then following up on the identified, and then communicating those, and then analyzing the supplied software for newly published known vulnerabilities. So the people who are doing the software assurance task should be doing each one of those if they're going to conform to the spec.
Okay. So we don't have to tell them to look for these because they're already looking for these. So we can narrow, I think we can narrow this issue to what happens when the known vulnerability does not negatively affect the supplied software. Does that sound right?
I think so.
Where did it go? Here it is. Okay. So I'll say because detection is already
3.15.
Thank you. Okay. So now we have our goal. We want to narrow it to cases where supplied software doesn't need fixing. A method. Okay. So we don't need to talk about a method, I don't think, anymore. Which contains, that contains. Is that how you say it? Contains vulnerability. Okay, so how should we say?
I think that second section is a separate issue if we're going to address it. Because I think issue 29 is only around the first sentence you have there, which is let's narrow this case. Supplied software doesn't need fixing. If we want to talk about continuous scanning, I think we should make a, like the definition of continuous scanning or et cetera. I think that should be issue 30 or something new, because that's unrelated. I think that's unrelated to the kind of the positive case that we're talking about here in 29.
I agree. So now what if I just drop these bullets in? Or let me see what's at the top. Like what was the first?
I think Chris kind of hit it on the head, is like this issue came in and then there's been like a lot of discussion, but I think we've gotten kind of far away from the original, there's been too long between the original assessment and where we are now. So it's almost like a reboot. Like I don't know if I want to change too much of the language that's already there in the 2.0 spec, unless we know like why we're changing it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It shouldn't be because of 29. It should be of like some other problem with the spec.
Okay. 3.3.2. Let me go down there. 3.2. Okay. Okay, so here's 3.3.2. If you can see that, I don't know if it's too small.
And I almost wonder if this language was fixed, somewhere between when issue 29 was created and what we currently see in the 2.0 spec, because it's like the issue was there's a false positive, deal with it. And then if I read, in 2.0 spec, it says no operate, determine what you need to do. And one of those is no operation, take appropriate action. Where is it? It's like the third to last bullet point. Depending on the risk impact score, take the appropriate action, contact customers, upgrade software components, or no further action. That might be the answer to 29. Maybe the person who made 29 wanted something more clear that false positives do exist. There's a difference between saying I'm not doing action because it's below my level of care versus I'm not doing action because it's a fake issue in the first place, false positive in the first place.
Yeah, maybe we are just meant to write an intro here, because see how it just starts with a bullet? It doesn't start with a little sentence. Maybe that's all they wanted.
I think there's something broken with 29. Like we should either clarify what the question is for 29 or close it and let the person refigure out what's wrong with the current spec.
Okay. Yeah, because this is a lot more than an intro paragraph. This is the only section not having an intro. So yeah, do we really need to modify the bullets? Maybe not. Maybe. Well, we've refreshed our memory about this. We're out of time and we haven't rewritten it. But if you want to go to the issue in GitHub and propose something for that first sentence, now that, since it's fresh on your minds, I'd be really appreciated. I can take a stab at it too after this discussion. I think it's clearer. And I'm sorry we don't have time to go to the other ones, but does anyone have anything you want to bring up in the last 2 minutes?
I think it's the current format that we're using to work on these specs, both the licensing spec and this spec, seem to consume a lot more time than one would have initially thought. And I think that I think that there's too much going on in these meetings in order to focus on why are we here. We're here to evaluate this pertinent comment to the spec, and it needs to be reviewed to change it as necessary so that when we submit the next revision, we'll be ready to do that.
Yeah, there might be a better format, or I'm not sure, but we can think about how to improve this and talk about that in our next meeting or over the mailing list.
Yeah, because we've still got those other two open items at 14 and 28 that we didn't even touch on today. And yeah, sometimes we get a little bit bogged down in the details of what's in the soup rather than does the soup taste good? Is it palatable to everyone?
I am sorry about that. I agree. So, all right. Well, everyone, thank you for your time. And I learned a lot actually from this discussion. So I do appreciate it. And I'll be in touch.
Well, thank you, Mary. We appreciate it.
May I ask you a question?
Sure.
When you demo the slides for the first one, I would like to know when is the open source automotive in China?
Sure. I think it might have been in the past. I didn't catch the date.
Yeah, I think Shane was actually over there for that. It's a couple of weeks ago.
It's already passed.
It might have happened. Sorry, it must have happened on the 20th of April. I thought those were future events. I apologize.
Okay, no problem. Thank you very much.
So, the only future event now is this one at the mini summit. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Mary,
Bye.
are you going to send the charts out? Oh, we've already got them. Never mind. I'm sorry.
Okay. No worries. Bye.
Thanks, Mary.
Bye.